Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ninth episode of the Side Quest. In this episode, we are discussing the hot topic of the year, the remote work and the trade-off that comes with it. So, what we are going to explore today is how remote work actually works in reality and who it is benefiting, especially financially. And are things going to change with AI in the mix? This is SideQuest, where we discuss work, life, and everything in between. I'm your co-host, Sneha.
And I'm your other co-host, Jamie. And let's get started, shall we? Right, so how do you feel about today's episode?
I'm quite excited about today's episode because, I love remote work, but today we are going to also talk about how we might have been robbed off of many things financially because of remote work as well. There is that other side. Not everyone, not me, but there is an angle to it, and that's what we are going to discuss, not just a bed of roses. So yeah, that's what is exciting today. What about you?
Obviously I've only been doing remote work for nearly 3 years now. It was initially a bit of a cultural change, but became natural within a few months just because you get used to it. But it just means you need to rely on communication more. Is the big thing.
Yeah.
So that's a nice segue over to our first segment. Who's paying for remote work? Between 2020 and 2024, companies had saved around $11,000 per employee.
Wow.
Whether that be through office leases were terminated, downsizing, just general costs and bills, because if you haven't got all the people in the office, you haven't got to run the office. And then all these kind of things were cut. Where has that cost gone? Have we seen this in our day-to-day working? Is that money invested elsewhere? Or is it just saved and essentially kind of just dumped on the employee?
So even though the pitch to the employees have been remote work is a luxury and a privilege that we are providing you, but only 63% of the employees actually report not getting any kind of equipment allowance. I have worked with various companies in this scenario as a full-time employees in some, and the only place that I have received anything other than a laptop and a pair of sweatshirt and a diary with the logo is just one, isn't it? Where I received a stand electric table. I got a proper equipment to help me out. I also know that very few companies contribute towards your bills, electricity and otherwise, but that is very, very rare. On top of that, since we both work from home, now we have 2 rooms permanently occupied as our offices, because one which is supposed to be an office is your office and a spare bedroom is my office. It is a kind of unreciprocated business expense, isn't it? Because otherwise we would be sitting in an office paid for by the office. And now we have a space, but we are paying as a part of our mortgage.
I know. And it's like, and obviously we do have to acknowledge that we are in quite a lucky position where we have a house that we can do that, but most people don't. We have to acknowledge the fact that some people have to have their office in their living room, or I know some people have it in their hallway at the bottom of their stairs. So it's situation depending. One of the downsides of working from home is going to be the cognitive costs, and that's things like children, animals, who probably do make very many appearances in our podcast, general noise, and the actual no mental separation between work and home. That's not really taking into account. And I imagine if there was some noise in the background during a meeting, your manager would be the first one to complain. So there is also a realistic pressure behind it. How do you feel? Because obviously in your case, the cats and the guinea pigs do like to sometimes make an appearance, don't they?
Oh, it's not always ideal, but as I said, I am a bit of an outlier when it comes to really liking remote work. And one of the biggest thing why I like remote work is the amount of time I save from commuting to my work. And second thing is that the train costs in the UK are so expensive. So you going to London, even from place like where we are, it's easily 100 plus pound one way. And imagine doing that every day or even twice a week. Any kind of increment that you're going to get over your salary as you move jobs, it's going to negate that. So I feel in those two terms, annually we save. As data says, like 27% of people cite that their home office cost actually goes through the roof as well. And that's a source of their frustration. And I agree, because many people have to have a garden office. I, for a fact, know a few people who actually left London and chose to go somewhere else because they could no longer sit in their 1-bedroom apartment and also work and also cook, live, survive there. So it was very claustrophobic. And then you just wanted to move out from the place that you called home for last 10 years. It's not just because of the choice, but it's just because can't work in the same place as I sleep. So in some way, it does feel like a cost shift dressed as a benefit to a certain extent, because not every companies do give you allowances or support you or make remote work any easier. They just expect you to be more present. Now that you don't have commute, they also expect you to work longer hours. So that's there as well.
Yeah, and obviously with the working on hours, they also expect you to be contactable for longer because, well, you've got no commute. So you can't use the excuse of you traveling, even though all of these companies will have a don't speak on the phone while commuting or driving. For those of you who listen and don't necessarily work from home, if you can recall when COVID happened, because it wasn't very long ago, when you were basically stuck inside, imagine having that, but also having your boss and other people's bosses nag you during that period. That's kind of what working at home can be like at its worst. Do you
Yeah,
agree on that?
true. And since, the reports are saying that companies saved 11,000 a year per employee because of the remote work. Did you see any of it, or did any one of us see any of it if you have been working in the same company after you started remote work? Because the cost that has been saved has not disappeared, isn't it? The cost has just been transferred to someone else, and the benefit or the savings that never got transferred to the employees, because we are seeing less growth in terms of working remotely as well. So the dynamics has completely changed.
Yeah. I don't know anyone who works remotely who has their bills paid for them during
Yeah.
the during 9 till 5, for argument's sake.
And you have your desk space, you have your broadband equipment, even focus, even coffee. You have to pay it out of your pocket, and which I don't think is any fair, because if you're saving 11K per employee needs to get something, even if it's a 500 per month.
Well, the employee's benefit is they get to work from home. As you don't get your commute anymore, the company somehow reminds you that they've saved you a commute, when in fact that isn't their choice anyway. It's the employee's choice to a certain extent.
Yeah. Because remote work has a hidden bill, and it lands on your kitchen table when you get that utility bills next month. And no one else is going to pay for it. And you're not getting the growth because, we will discuss about this later in the episode as well, about how the growth has stagnated with the rise of remote work.
Yeah, and also, as we all know, at the time of this recording, which is March 2026, bills aren't getting any cheaper, and electricity and gas and everything generally is getting more expensive, and wages aren't going up, and companies aren't helping to cover the cost.
That leads us to our second segment, which is why remote workers get promoted less. So, before you go a little bit deeper into it, I want to ask you, since you have recently switched, it's been less than 5 years since you started working remote. Have you also realized that your growth has been comparatively limited than when you were working from office?
Yeah, I would say it probably has because I don't interact with other teams unless we have a very specific meeting. And you don't get to meet people in the office and just be like, oh, hi, what do you do? Like you don't get to sit around in the kitchen and have a quick chat, figure out what people do and sort of make those connections on how it all fits together. You can't really do that with a remote setting, especially if you're new to the company as well. And those kind of relationships will build over time, but it's going to take a hell of a lot longer than it does if you go to the office every day or just regularly, which I think is a negative because it does encourage silo working, which, despite where it's encouraged sometimes, it doesn't actually benefit anybody. So,
Yeah, I also feel that in office, you didn't have to actively work to maintain the visibility of your work and your presence. You were seen in meetings or corridor, like you said, you had that bonding experience with other colleagues as well. And, presence actually built reputation often consistently, and managers formed opinions and impressions about you without you having to manage them or manage the expectations as well. So with remote work, I feel visibility has now become a sort of active work.
yeah, totally agree. I've spent pretty much a whole day last week. Obviously, I'm going on holiday coming up. So I've got to show what I've done ahead of the for next week. I basically lost a day of work just doing that across all my projects. I do think a lot of time is wasted on it because you don't obviously with your reference, you don't get that interaction where you're working at your desk in the office, for example, and your boss walks past and go, "Oh, what are you working on?" I said, "Cool. When's it going to be done?" No, next Friday. That's what, a 15, 20-second conversation.
So,
Yeah. And then obviously with Teams, you end up booking meetings and it becomes a longer than a 20-second conversation. It becomes a full on meeting.
so can we say that self promotion has now become a sort of a core job skills and we are penalizing introverts or deep workers?
Yes, I would probably say that be showing how much work you're doing is an unofficial KPI these days. In terms of the introvert and extrovert thing, I think it depends on your role. Generally speaking, being an extrovert is going to help more than being an introvert. However, if you've got a very specific role, people will listen to you anyway because you are the known expert, regardless of what you like as a person.
I feel that with remote work, it just exposed that the promotions have always been about the optics. And I have been called out for not being an extrovert as well. And I really feel that, yes, with remote work, people like me, or even people who are more introverted than me, are penalized just because you don't scream and shout and crave for that visibility. You might do your work, you might show everything, but I do feel that introverts are dealt with a smaller hand in comparison to extrovert.
Yes, but I also think that's down to poor management because as a man, say, so your manager in that situation should know to basically tell everyone else on that call to shut up for 5 minutes and listen to the expert.
Are seeing bad managers everywhere because McKinsey itself said that managers actually rate in office employees 15% higher on executive presence with the same output. Multiple HR studies have also said that remote workers are 20% less likely to be promoted as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because we'll subconsciously or consciously in a lot of cases go, "Oh, you've made the extra effort to come into the office, even though you don't need to be. Like you're one of us." And it's not necessarily also in terms of promotions. It's also not necessarily based on ability either. It's just you're there, you fit in.
Yeah, you can say that remote workers are 20% less likely to be promoted, not because they do less, but they are less visible or seen less. And 60% of remote workers feel disconnected from company culture. That is also goes back to managers not being trained to handle people remotely or managers not being good people manager, as you pointed out.
Yeah. And as I've mentioned on every single podcast, there is a severe lack of managers around these days, whether it
Yeah.
be training or ability.
So, can we say that two people, same work, one got promoted, and the only difference is one ensured that he or she was either in the office or more visible in terms of their performance? For example, they were updating their performance in the Slack, communicating more, making their overall performance much more noticeable than the same person with the same kind of output.
Yeah, I could agree. I just want the caveat, just for the sake of the conversation, is that like we're not just talking about people who live an hour down the road from the office because obviously remote companies hire remotely and you have people applying from all over the world. Is it fair that say the boss works in the London office, for example, and one employee lives in London, so they've got a short commute, so it's quite easy for them. The other person could live and work in Spain or America. It's not fair on that person who can't just come to the office at the drop of a hat. So we're not just talking about like you need to make the effort to come to the office because I think a lot of people do make the effort when there's a meeting, there's a big meeting, or it's just sometimes it's good to have a catch up with everyone, isn't it? But it's when you have those big geographical differences, the person furthest away shouldn't be disadvantaged in any situation.
Unlike many companies penalizing you for the distance away that you live from your office and not having visibility, our products are globally visible in laughinglucky.com and you can buy them. We don't penalize you for wherever you buy. You just get your cute, sassy product in a couple of days right at your doorsteps. So, with that note, I think we can go into our segment number 3, which is why meetings have tripled with remote works. So, do you feel that too? Like we have so much of meetings?
Yeah, and I'd say most of them are kind of pointless. Like again, I did reference it briefly, is that we gone are those 20-second kind of corridoral elevator pitches as well. They've all sort of gone out the window. For those who don't know, if you're in an elevator with a boss or a senior management, you've got until that end of that elevator ride to get your point across. So you would be very to the point and snappy because you don't know if we're going to get the opportunity again. Whereas with Teams now, it's, oh, let's have a half-hour meeting. Let's bring so-and-so in. And suddenly it goes from a quick general chat to you've got about 10 people on the call. It's suddenly a big debate and people complaining about not being referenced when all you wanted to do was discuss the idea of something.
Yeah. Fun fact on people, in an average, I spend more than 12 hours in meeting. That is meeting on record and not in impromptu meeting or quick huddles. So in 40 hours week, 12 hours minimum are gone. And that is not even accounting for 15, 20 minutes huddle here and there throughout the day as well. So that's the amount of meeting. And I'm supposed to do a lot of deep work as a PMM. And every time you get distracted, it takes you a minimum of 23 minutes to gain your focus back into the work. So you can imagine how much time is being lost in between meetings and in between calls as well.
Yeah, and I was doing my timesheets on Friday, and I had done 32 hours of meetings last week, my working week, and I basically had 8 hours to do my work. So
I just
yeah,
have exclamation mark in my face right now for people who can't see us, but
don't get me wrong, it's not always like that, but last week was quite busy.
yeah, because remote work was supposed to give us our time back. And it was supposed to have no open plan distraction. And you can do deep work throughout in it and only meet people when necessary. Async first cultures, calendars no longer belong to us, even though they were supposed to belong to us. And when we look at the data, the meetings have gone up by 150% since 2020. The hallway questions, has now become a schedule cost, and the quick sync has become stand-up meetings. And now these stand-up meetings and quick sync have become a kind of a recurring block as well. So we have now replaced physical interruptions with digital scheduling, and somehow even made it worse.
You know someone, a friend of a friend, wink, who had a colleague who was trying to work really hard on one project in particular, and he just kept getting interrupted the whole time. So we booked a 2-hour training session on a bit of software that was coming up just so he could then focus on that work. Because when you put in focus time, certain departments are less respectful than others.
Yeah, HBR, which is Harvard Business Review. So Harvard Business Review says that 71% of senior managers think most meetings are unproductive. Then why are they encouraging? It goes back to our point of showing your visibility, proving people that you're still working, isn't it?
Well, it's also the misconception, and it also shows the standard that managers seem to think that managing is having a meeting, because
Yeah.
that's quite an easy way to go to their boss. I've had X number of meetings with the team this week. I am leading them and showing them what to do, when all you're really doing is disrupting them.
Is it the explosion of trust problem, managers not trusting async work?
Yes and no. I think that will always vary between company and manager and department. I think it's definitely something to consider. I would say that, but I also think that does come down to how competent the manager is.
Yeah. What else could it be? Because, companies like Shopify, they have no meetings policy. Certain companies, they have no meeting days as well, or async first norms. So do you think these kind of things are going to solve the problems?
Things like having no meeting policies are, in theory, they're great, but reality, depending on the nature of the work that your company does, it's not going to work. Like as a PM, I could not never have a meeting. Like it would never work because it would just be madness. My main part of my role effectively is to make sure everyone comes together and speaks and is going in the same direction to deliver effectively. So I couldn't get away with that. Jobs, potentially. Yeah, I could see it working because a lot of these meetings, like we said, it's just appearing busy. Have you found something similar with your line of work?
Since I also work with multiple stakeholders, I feel sometimes just meeting someone, even for 5-minute huddle, and telling them this is what is happening, let's do this, actually gives much more clarity than async work. I don't have a correct answer for this because I don't see things being solved by async, but I also think meetings are interruptions. So Async is also polite. I also feel that this is how we forget about things and decisions die. All I can say is that yes, we replaced interruption with scheduling. Now we have scheduled the interruptions and somehow even made it worse. But I really don't have an answer of how to actually do it until and unless you really have a complete new generation that is trained on working remote. There is no solution for it because right now we have people who have all their lives worked with people, met someone over the coffee and gotten a solution. And now we are forced to work remote as well. So there are certain roles where you can't do that. But a part of my role also requires me to do async work and do a lot of deep work and focus. And I think that doesn't get done. And that part of my work can be done with async and no meeting policy completely. So I think we need to find a balance between two, but I don't have an answer.
Yeah, I think if you're arranging a meeting, it's just a generally good policy. If you have to have 10 people on a call, maybe the first agenda on the meeting should be the thing that affects everyone and then
Mm,
slowly whittle out so people can just drop off.
yeah.
If people are busy, if they only need to be on the call for 5 minutes, do that bit first. Let them
Yeah.
drop off, then just work your way down. And I don't mean base it on job descriptions either.
Yeah.
So, moving on to our next segment, which is going to be remote work has made us faster, but it's also made us a bit shallower. What are your initial thoughts on that?
I agree because there is a kind of a speed paradox happening right now where we are executing faster, we are creating documents faster, the work is getting faster. Solo tasks do get shipped quicker. There is no commute time, less distraction, more heads down hours. Stanford has even reported 13% increase in productivity for individual focused work. However, what you also see is when it comes to decision making, it has become much more slower because a simple decision where everyone gathered, formed an opinion, reached a conclusion. Now you write a proposal, people comment individually, and there is no real debate happening, and no one takes the ownership at the end of that decision making process, and it gets derailed for a longer period of time. What it has done is, like MIT has reported, 25% of drop in spontaneous idea generation in fully remote places as well. So I think, yes, we have become faster in places, but it has also made us slower.
We are in a situation now where everyone agrees when you're on a call, everyone tends to agree with each other and then everyone breaks without actually thinking or discussing things through correctly. And there's also an element of people don't feel as confident to speak out on a Teams call.
Yeah.
Because, well, for one mixture of things, it's you don't want to, if it's coming towards the end of a meeting, there's a fixed end point to that meeting where it has to end because they're probably going into another one. Whereas if you're chatting face to face, there's a bit more flexibility, or that person you're talking to will go, right, I've got a meeting now, but I'm free in half an hour. Just come to my office and see me. You can't do that remotely because you can't see when people are actually free. A lot of spontaneous conversations have gone out the window due to remote working.
Yeah, because Stanford HAI reports that creative task has originally almost 18% lower in fully distributed team because of how remote work is actually designed. And Deloitte says 55% of knowledge worker say remote work makes alignment harder. And me having one of the roles that needs to manage multiple stakeholders, I have to agree with this.
Yeah, I do again. And this again brings me back to my point, and I'm not just going to keep blaming the ability of managers, is that if you had your team in the office, the team would generally organize themselves or talk to each other without any prompting. And then the manager can obviously just manage. Whereas now the manager has to keep arranging meetings at their convenience, which isn't always convenient for his team. Yeah.
I feel that we have built a very perfect documentation process of a very wrong decision because since, like you said, less people are objecting, less people are disagreeing, and there's less debate happening in the meetings, we forget that good decisions come from disagreement and remote work tends to reduce those disagreements. So there's that gap as well.
Yeah. And how many times, like if you have your daily sync with your team in the morning, and everyone goes, what's your day looking like? What are you working on? Which is the correct sort of meeting to have, right? And the first thing you probably do is go, oh, I've got 14 meetings today, or I've got back to backs until 3 o'clock or something. It's already kind of on a negative because you know you're not going to get any work done. So you're just trying to get through these meetings as quickly as possible whilst cramming work in the middle. So yeah, it's not necessarily positive.
Many a times, what we forget is people who end up changing our careers aren't in our team. You are being evaluated by many people. Many people have perception and understanding of what you bring to the table and change that. That's how the performance reviews were actually designed. It rarely comes from doing work within your team, rather how you contribute to overall organization, how other people, for example, a colleague who actually recommended you in front of hundreds of people for one project that we had done with them, and it had quite an impact. Or a manager from another department who noticed your work. This is how career progressions were developed, where you got noticed and where you grew. And with remote work, as we discussed, the visibility is less, and it's just you and your manager who are working together on your performance. And if, God forbid, your manager doesn't like you for some or the other reason, you can forget about any kind of progression that you're thinking about.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying. Within your team, you don't really get the recognition you probably should do because everyone's busy and technically it is your job. So a good stat really is that when Microsoft went remote, 25% of their cross team interaction had dropped. Also, I believe LinkedIn referral rates fell 30% in fully remote companies. And it's back on this point of accidental visibility where you just meet someone in the spur of the moment and have a conversation.
Yeah.
No great story started with, I had a Teams meeting.
I have a question for you
Yeah.
in this. Do you have coffee breaks within your company where someone just says that, hey, can we chat for 5 minutes over a coffee? And you just chat about random things. Sometimes you talk about switch to, or sometimes you even moan about your work and pressure that you're in. It could be anything, but you just have coffee breaks with someone that you get along in work.
No, not really, but I do share quite a few memes with people,
Mhm.
which probably shouldn't, but it gets a laugh out of people.
Feel one thing that we lack in remote work is the bonding between the colleagues. And with coffee breaks, you really find your tribe within the company that you're working. And it actually helps, because sometimes I ping one of my friends and say that, hey, I'm having a very stressful day. Can we actually just chat over a coffee? And we just share about our load, and they give you a pep talk and you feel nice towards the end of the 15 minutes or 10 minutes call. And you do the same whenever they're having a rough day as well. So I think the coffee chats need to be there. When you start it, it is quite awkward because the first conversation is, do you want to get started? Do you want to talk? Who should talk? It is almost like a therapy session getting started with a therapist, but it is really nice. I recommend, people who work remote to actually do virtual coffee breaks.
Recent things happened in the past month or so is that my boss has started putting in a weekly catch up. Funnily enough, everyone who works in his team's first name starts with a J. So it's called the Team J's catch up. Very original. But what normally happens in that is I'm generally quite, as you know, I will happily talk about issues that are going on or something that's gone wrong. I don't sit on anything. There's other people who don't have that confidence. My boss will ask me to start talking about that resonates with someone who's quiet, who's having a problem. And then that will then naturally get them to get involved in the conversation. I just take a seat back and just let them talk about their actual issues.
Sure, Pat or Jamie doesn't let the other person speak. Similar to what happens in most of our podcasts, where I have to pause him and say that, hey, Jamie, you're going off tangent. You have been speaking for the last 5 minutes. Can I get a turn to speak? I have some points to make.
I am never on tangent, and my poor darling wife, I am literally another cat in this house when it comes to these things.
Yeah, the one that doesn't listen is bossy and is annoying. That's Jamie. Ladies and
Yeah, and I
gentlemen,
can't
he has
even use the litter
admitted.
tray properly. I wonder if this will stay in it.
It is. It better not be removed. This part doesn't need to be edited out. But
This will be our most popular short ever.
but yeah, but when I moved to UK for the first time, one thing I noticed is how executives build their own team. So if they moved from one company to another, they bought their whole team with them slowly. People they knew, people they trusted. So you can say that the careers are built on some or the other form of ties. And with remote work, since you don't get a chance to bond with anyone in particular, those are completely removed, those kind of connection, those kind of networking. And especially if you're an introvert or a shy person who just doesn't want to put themselves out there, you never get that opportunity of moving on and being pulled into a bigger team and with bigger opportunity on their own until you apply. With thousands of applications and AI, overload thinking that your CV is good enough to be passed to another stage.
Yeah, there is also the fact that I do think for some reason companies do prefer to hire people from outside the company rather than promote internally these days. They put it under the guise of, oh, we need new, fresh ideas or whatever else. But you kind of think, well, maybe if you look at the culture of your workplace, there might be a lot of people who already have good ideas, but they're being ignored or
Or
you're not giving them the platform to speak up.
or they don't get time. That is also a big issue. The people who are already in the company, if you feel no one is bringing the fresh idea or doing the deep work, or there's a lot of shallow work happening, please look at how much they are working, because there's a lot of shallow work happening as everyone is expected to finish a research document in 5 minutes because of AI as well. It's a resource problem, and maybe you need to give them some time and take something off their plate before you thinking that they deserve a new boss and a new person is going to come and wave a wand and solve that problem. It's not. After 3 months, they are going to be into the same mudslide, and they would be doing the same thing, which is not getting things done because they don't have time to.
Yeah. And if you want someone who is going to be continuously like they were in the first 3 to 6 months of a job, keep their workload at that level.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's going to be peaks and troughs, but don't just have them constantly work and give them time to think
Yeah.
or theorize and plan things out. It's all right saying, oh, you can just stick it in an AI agent who will do it for you. That's not, the technology isn't there yet
Yeah. And
for
if
that kind
you
of thing.
expect people to churn out reports after reports in 2 minutes or 5 minutes and not give them time to breathe or time to think, you are going to end up burning them out. And AI is not going to solve your problem. That is the simple.
No, but it is very easy for your manager or the person expecting said report to go, or just use AI, it's quicker. So remote work has already reduced how much you rely on colleagues on a day-to-day basis, thus increasing silos, even within your own teams. AI will help with that and is a tool. Again, AI is a tool. It is not a replacement yet. But AI is going to help you draft, review, search, and do some iteration. It's basically replaced you going, hello, dear friend and colleague who you like. Can you just give this a once over?
Mhm.
So there's that. And I think the stat is that Copilot users generally complete tasks 55% faster, which
Mhm.
in certain cases I'll agree with. But obviously that stat is probably cherry picked by Microsoft and Copilot.
And obviously, you ship faster, but you only learn something and grow when there is a friction to it. And since AI is 99.99% of time until you have given it a specific prompt to is going to agree with you. So you're not going to learn anything. You might have a very polished document with no grammatical errors, but are you going to bring in new ideas? And with just AI as your coworker, I don't think so, because when two people are talking, obviously the other person is going to have some different idea than yours and you're going to learn something. So AI is only going to polish what you have.
Also, I know that in some companies, well, probably most companies, that the kind of up to a certain point, everyone only has access to the company approved Copilot, which isn't the best. But then I know that in my example, the more senior staff have access to all of the AI agents from all around the globe. So they can pick and choose. So they have a distinct advantage on that front over their staff, which isn't really fair, I don't think. But obviously, you can't give access to everything for everyone.
Yeah. And everything that's happening with remote work and with AI, there is a compounding effect on isolation, because remote work remove the complete office environment where you met new people, you understood and learned to be a team player. And now with AI, it's removing a part of your colleagues because you are getting more and more used to working with an artificial intelligence. So that's there as well. And you can say that you don't need help to start anymore. With AI, you just need help to improve yourself. That's all is required. There is no hand holding. There is no someone coming and telling you that this is how it's done. You are expected to already know that, or at least use AI to take you to that place.
Yeah, and just to play devil's advocate, and I'm sure this is a realistic scenario, if you've got a member of staff that, to be frank, isn't very good at their job, but they are very good at using AI, are they likely to get a promotion or put into a position of power? Which ultimately, because they're not very good at their job, will they lead the company down the wrong path or their team down the wrong path and
Very
waste
good
resource?
question.
And the other thing about AI that we obviously discussed in the podcast is that it's only going to reaffirm itself. So if that person is taking advantage of the fact that they are really good at using AI, they're going to make the AI produce results that suit them rather
Yeah.
than the results that need to be found.
Yeah, because Gallup already says that remote workers using AI report higher output but lower team connection scores. And you can say that AI makes you faster but quieter at the same time. And what you need in remote work to a certain extent is also visibility. So that is kind of a counterproductive to a certain extent.
Yeah, and also what's counterproductive is that AI may highlight where the majority of your job can be automated. So just bear that in mind if you are trying to play
Yeah.
the AI system.
Yeah, and just because you have access to AI from work doesn't mean that your organization uses it properly, because 77% of people report they want AI tools, but only 22% of people feel that their organization uses them well. You have shared the example of a couple of organizations who always tell you that you need to use AI, but limit any kind of access to AI. Your computer or systems can't access it.
Yeah, you're allowed 100% access to the company approved, restricted AI, and you'll get the answers that you're given. You're
Yeah.
welcome. So moving on to segment 7, remote work is obviously great, but only if you know what you're doing. Do you agree with that?
I kind of agree, because if you look at the data themselves, early career workers develop core skills 40% slower in remote first roles. And 21% have no mentor compared to 12% in hybrid. But even if you want to work and learn certain things, you need human interaction, you need experience. And if you are thrown into the weeds of working and expected to do the work on your own with the use of AI or other tools, with minimum connection or interaction with other human beings, I feel that people are going to show bigger gaps where if you don't know what you're doing, your progress is going to be slower.
Yeah, because obviously you're not going to learn anything by osmosis during that period, are you? Like
No.
um, most, you're going to learn mostly when you're in a new workplace or a new environment by just people watching, and of
Yes. And
learn a lot doing that, like subconsciously.
yes, and if you're experienced, you already are much more articulate. You are already more visible. You know how to navigate the remote work. You know how to self direct or manage upwards as well without being physically present, as well as manage teams. I think remote work amplifies that independence. And when you're starting out or when you're not good at it, I think it also limits the opportunity to grow.
Yeah, and the other thing that remote work doesn't help with is you don't get to see the interpersonal relationships in the office. So you don't know who's friends with who. You don't know who doesn't like each other. You don't know who has kind of competitive nature going on. Whereas if you are in the office, you can see all these things, which means depending on your role, you can manipulate that to your advantage.
In office workers see 4 to 8% higher salary growth after 18 months in comparison to remote workers. So I can't say if the answer is hybrid, because I like remote work. I see a lot of benefit in it, but I also feel that remote work is very much designed for freelancer, contractors, people who work in single or a couple of team departments where you need deep work and focus, rather than where people interaction is going to be one of the core assets, or where you're starting out in your career. Because if someone starts their first job as a remote work, I don't think they actually can adjust down the line, because the way everything is designed, even with remote work, the expectations that is there, it is completely different, and they will never understand the full value of it. And second thing that's going to happen is, I feel remote work is designed to amplify the good performers only. So if you're not a good performer, it limits you. And
Yeah.
by good performers, I mean people who already know how the office system works. They know what their job is, what the deliverables are, and they also understand how to manage the team and what their work expectations are. They understand the strategy. So if you are none of it, or if you are someone who is not quite there yet, or just starting out, the weather is not in your favor, is what I would say.
Yeah, and then obviously, if you are in the office, you kind of naturally might end up with some sort of mentor or guide or just a buddy, as they like to call them, just someone you can go to and ask questions. You can still get that remotely, but it's not quite as free form. It's I have to schedule it.
Also, we human beings learn through imitation. That's how we learn the language. That's how we learn how to behave, how to be a human being, basically since we were child. So since that is taken away and we are in an isolation, that learning opportunity is not there. So you either have those skills already, otherwise you are going to be very limited in terms of the opportunities that is going to be presented to you.
Other thing is, and talking for myself here, is that I don't see the point in me going to my local office, which is an hour and a half away, if all I'm going to do is be on Teams calls all day. Who does that benefit? No one. I'm taking up a hot desk all day, which could be used for someone who can actually use it. I'm grumpy because I've had to commute 3 hours that day. And all I'm doing is exactly the same as what I do at home in a more comfortable setting where I'm genuinely going to get more done because I've got less distractions.
True. So can we say that the new team models now is there's a need for it to be smaller, faster, and AI supported in order to survive this without isolating the benefits of remote work?
We could say that. Agreement there. I don't really have a counterpoint at this stage. So, as we've already referenced, Shopify has previously cut 20% of its workforce, and then the revenue grew about 26%. And this was back in 2023. Honor also replaced around 700 support agents with an AI resolution, which actually dropped the resolution time from 11 minutes to 2 minutes. Now, since then, Klarna has actually slightly backtracked on that, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Because whilst it was quicker, the quality dropped.
Yeah.
Also, Gartner predicts that 30% of enterprise teams will shrink headcount by 20% whilst maintaining the same level of output. So it's not a prediction, we're already there.
Yeah. Because the old model was all about managers, coordinator, executor, and now it is being replaced by one single person with AI minions handling execution. The questions now companies are already asking is not how do we manage a remote workforce, it is more about what work actually requires a human at this point. So remote work has made the distribution of the team possible, but it is also making it smaller with AI in the mix.
Yeah, and the other thing about AI is how do you hold it accountable? Like if something goes wrong, how do you hold AI accountable?
That's how people are going to lose a job and then rehiring is going to happen, similar to the Klarna story, right? Going to be a lot of learnings that is going to happen in next couple of years where we are going to make mistakes. We are going to learn, we are going to rectify and move on. But we are going to see smaller teams and we are going to see AI in the mix. And we are going to see some or the other form of remote working happening because in the long term, I don't think any company want to spend hundred of pounds in leasing and paying bills of a space that is not going to be used to the max. And AI is not going to use the space. So
No, no, not unless, well, we're not going to get mass data and server banks popping up in large scale offices all over the world, are we? So, just to finish off, in this episode, would you agree that remote work hasn't made work any easier? It has just changed who's paying the cost.
yeah,
AI is also changing how much of that work needs another human being at all.
yeah.
Is
Like
that a good
AI,
thing or a bad thing?
mix of both. Depends. If you didn't have a team now, at least you have a team member. And if you really need a human resource, it is going to be more difficult for you to challenge that to your leadership and get a head count.
And just looking forward into the future, and it's already creeping in, is your work more about being visible than it is actually about doing the work?
Visibility, 100 through and through. It is going to be visibility, and that's what is going to make you irreplaceable.
And that's us for this podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. I've been Jamie.
And I'm Sneha, and I hope this episode helped you learn few things, our take on remote work. You agree, disagree, post it in comments. Don't forget to check our products in laughinglucky.com. See you next week. Until then, bye bye.
Bye.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.